Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. Today I've got Reuven Shelef of Out of the Box Consulting, and this is a great conversation. This is a conversation where you need to look at yourself and say, wow, do I need to dive deeper? Do I need to understand myself better before I go and really achieve this next great achievement? And he has a 7-step framework to help you do things you've never done before. He's also got some other tools. But this is just a great conversation. It's a great check-in for you. And I encourage you to sit through it, think about it, stop it, and think, wow, do I need to think about that more? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? There's a lot here. Let's dive in. Reuven, thanks for being on the show. You have a 7-step process. And by the way, I love systems because I found that my biggest leadership failure was that I was not systematic. So the fact you have a 7-step system for untangling complex challenges, I saw that and I said, ooh, that guy looks really interesting to have on the show. So how did you decide to develop this and how's it going? Where do you want to start?
Well, I can start. Well, David, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really thrilled to be here. I watched a few episodes and I love your approach. The Untangling Complex Challenges methodology, I never sat and thought, okay, I'm going to develop a methodology. Just like I didn't think, oh, I'm going to be a management consultant. It was a culmination about 2 decades of working in tech environments, both startups and large corporations, being an engineer by trade, hardware engineering, board design mainly. And I went through various departments of companies and I learned where things go wrong. And I started identifying and teaching people how to do things better, how to prevent things from going wrong and fixing whatever goes wrong in a structured manner. So with all that experience, I started doing management consulting about 22 years ago. And in parallel to those first 10 years of management consulting, I found myself on a journey of personal growth and development, looking inward. Who am I? My connection to the universe, to spirit, things that I never, especially as an engineer, I thought that I'm different and I'm not spiritual and I'm not connected to these woo things. But I moved to California and I know, maybe the air or something. And I found myself in this literally a journey. I spent maybe 50% of my time in that journey without intending to, but my learnings and experiences in my personal journey, I took them and brought them to my management consulting practice. And I also found myself taking disciplines that we widely use in the world of technology, engineering, physics, math, business, and I brought those tools and disciplines to human being. First of all, to my life, and I can share more about that. It saved my marriage at a certain point. And I found myself about 15 years ago, actually, oh, this is a methodology. This is actually how I do things. Not so secret sauce of how I do anything, whether it's working with an executive in a coaching or mentoring engagement, or I'm working with a team in a company on building systems and teaching them how to do processes better. So that's how it formed and became. And once I found myself documenting, I found myself defining the methodology, I trademarked it and started, working under that cover as well.
Well, Reuven, I find it very interesting and positive that you first applied or researched to apply on yourself versus figuring out, oh, I'm going to fix you. You were focusing on where do I need fixing, which I think is a journey, not a destination. And I'm really curious, what were some of the early things that struck you that you wanted to improve in yourself? And how did you go about finding the information on that?
I wasn't aware at that point. I lacked the awareness that I need to change things. I thought I'm perfect. However, I was posed with questions that I couldn't answer. And that actually was the opening. So for example, I was in this introduction to a workshop called the Landmark Forum. It was a friend invited me and told me, go and register. You have to do this course. And I knew something about it before, and I did something in the world of self-development 10 years before, but it wasn't active in my life at that time. And in that introduction, the leader we were about 100 people in the room, and I was first or second row. And in the first half hour, the only thing I could think of was, why is she holding the little microphone, like a microphone that you're supposed to, with a clip that you're supposed to attach here? She's holding it in her hand, and every move that she makes, it makes a lot of noise. And as a sound engineer, one of my early professions, it drove me crazy. And I found myself, I was hardly listening to what she's actually saying. I was bothered by that. And I noticed that at a certain point, and I started asking, like, what's going on there? Now, in the middle of the evening, there was a break in which there is an invitation for the people who want to register into the course to register. I was ready to go, but the leader and I had a conversation. She approached me and we had a conversation. I was from Israel, I was born in Texas, but I grew up in Israel. She was from Lebanon. And we had this heart-to-heart conversation about our humanity. And she asked me, and I complained about everything that I could and how things could be better and all that. I was very great at identifying failures at that point in my life. We're talking 20-some years ago.
Yeah.
And she asked me this question, Reuven, how are you being about this? And I didn't understand the question. So I said, what do you mean? I said what I think. You should do this, this, and this. And she said, yeah, I understand. How are you being? How are you being right now? And I needed her to explain to me what she means. So she said something like, you are a human being. You're not a human doer. You're not a human haver. You're a human being. So there is doing, there is having, there is being. How are you being right now? And she gave me some examples of ways of being, like anxious, excited, afraid, loving, caring. It blew my mind. I suddenly understood that there is a whole world and language that I am foreign to completely. And that was the beginning of my journey. So I signed up for the course. And it literally changed my life because I got to look at who I'm being as a human being. And there's a lot more to it. Like, who am I in the matter? What are my responsibilities way beyond my technical or work or family responsibilities? Like, I get to declare, to invent myself as possibility. Long story short, it was a little crack where a lot of light was shining in. And that was how I got to looking at this.
So you could decide whether you want to go down this path or not. But I'm curious, based on what I've gone through in my life, some conversations I've had with other people. But as you look back in your life prior to this point, when you were in that meeting, when you were talking with her, were there aspects of the way you were raised or people you interacted with and you were in relationship with until that point that kind of either modeled not getting in touch with your being, who you are as a being, versus doing, and what was the other one? Stuff? Having stuff, yeah. Okay, having. So were there people that kind of modeled that for you or reinforced that in the relationships you were in? And so you didn't understand. It was,
yeah.
You didn't, I don't think you used the term, but kind of like a foreign language.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Much deeper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk about that a little bit on what the aha moment was, but even going back as you started to understand more about how you developed the way you developed?
Yeah. It's a combination of relationships, upbringing, relationships, parents, etc., and frameworks or situations, environments framework. So, for example, and I want to also touch on I'll answer your question, and then I want to touch on that part of how you have become. That's pivotal, actually.
Yeah.
For everyone. I learned these skills of identifying where things go wrong and the importance of doing things right. And of course, right and wrong are subjective, but in a given context, if there is a faucet that is broken and water is coming out, the right way is to stop the faucet from spurting water, right?
Yeah.
So that just in context.
Yeah. Or you mentioned you were a sound engineer.
Yeah.
There's a right or a wrong way as a sound engineer because you've got to get the best possible sound.
Is there background noise? Is the white noise, right? Yeah. The frequency, is the level, the amplitude. Yeah. Okay. So in that context, from a very young age, I learned the importance of doing things right. In an agricultural setting, I grew up on orchards and I tended to the trees from a very young age. So, if we wouldn't water them or feed them or care for them, they would die. There wouldn't be fruit. So, and moving later in life in boarding school, also agricultural and military, a big part of who I became was given by my upbringing, by my parents, for good and bad. So, for example, my dad was very strict and emphasized on doing things right. So I got that part and it served me very well in life. However, he was less empathetic. So I was less empathetic. So that's one part is those kinds of relationships. In the Army, I was a company commander in field intelligence. I had over 100 officers and soldiers reporting to me. It was a serious undertaking, and there's a certain way that you have to be as a soldier, as an officer, as a commander, and being in the system between 18 years old and 22, where the brain is still forming. I thought that I'm being the best that I could. Now, from the Army perspective, from a military perspective, I was very good. But from a human being perspective, much later in life, I discovered I have no idea how to form healthy relationship with people.
Yeah.
Because it's my word, coming out fresh from the Army after being in such a position, it's my word and there is nothing else.
Yeah.
Go build a relationship like that. So I had to learn the hard way and kind of unlearn certain ways of being without me even knowing that I had ways of being, to unlearn and find the inner, what's called in psychology, the little Reuven, the little boy, who I connect a lot with until today. My true self, I like to see it as, to see myself as about 7 years old. That's when I was still innocent, precious, mischievous, like crazy. I got a lot of beating from my uncle and from my grandma, but I was the happiest person on earth with beautiful relationships and excitement. And so today, I'm well in touch with all those parts that were hidden and quote unquote formed who I have become. Yeah. And that's very common, with us human beings. We become something and it's mostly based on all these relationships and experiences. The question is, do we pause at a certain point to take a look? How have we become this way? And are we committed to being this way in our life moving forward? Or are we interested in being some other way?
Yeah. It's interesting, and you bring up the orchards and I assume in Israel, because you said you grew up in Israel. The only time I've been to Israel was 1973 as a 16-year-old. And I remember back then seeing the orchards of, at the time where I was, orange trees in land that looked totally dry. But Israel was already using drip irrigation. and having amazing fruit from it. I don't even know whether they put vitamins into the water at that stage. I think it was still pre that stage, but
yeah, we would feed them with cow poop and chemically based food.
Yeah. But amazing. But going back to your subject there, I think this is really deep, and I think that many of us, it takes a long time to have that moment where we start really thinking, am I the person I want to be? And am I in relationship with others the way I want to be? And the different attributes of that. I do wish that we taught more of this in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean early school. Speaking of America, but you could speak of Israel too. I don't know Israel's education system, but in America, you think, what would happen in our nation if we taught people to understand, kids starting in 6th grade, how to manage money, how to start a business, be an entrepreneur, how to be in relationship with people, how to handle conflict, how to avoid conflict, how to adjust your behavior slightly but in a healthy way to the other person's preference or communication style, and all these different aspects of leadership and things. We taught the soft skills side. I think the hard skills would find their way. And I'm not talking political. I'm not talking religious, although we should have respect for religion, as long as it's peaceful with everyone. So, but I'd like to see if you can peel back the onion just a touch more on that. As you started going down, what was kind of the trigger? You mentioned this woman asking you, what is your being today? I mean, as you started down that path of thinking about who am I really, what things came to mind?
The biggest revelation of the time then was that I don't have to be any way that I have been until now. I have permission to alter who I am, how I show up with other people, what am I committed to. It was the permission or the invitation, actually, to look at that possibility. That was groundbreaking for me. And with that permission, I'm kind of guy, when you give me permission, I use it. And I dove so deep. I went full in. I consumed education and practice like no one else around me. Like I remember there was that course, the first course, and then I did the advanced course. In the advanced course, we basically created our future from nothing. So handling the past, not disregarding the past. We're well informed by the past, but not letting it anymore dictate our future. That on its own is unbelievable. It's freeing, and it enables like a blank canvas. Okay, so in the advanced course, we got the opportunity to design and create the life that we're actually committed to. And that was a pivotal moment in my life where, for example, it was a moment that I realized that I have a deep value for peace between people. That was never present for me.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I thought, I didn't think it's even an issue, but I got in touch. And it also later, it showed up in moving meditation practices that I started doing, again, out of these invitations that I accepted and indulged in, where before meditation, I can't sit for a moment. Okay, so I found a way to meditate that is not sitting meditation, actually multiple forms of that. And that opened up a whole new world of connection, energy, learn to feel energy.
So you talk about that you're not going to let your past dictate your future. So that seems to be kind of strict language, whereas I would say something more, and maybe it's too casual, about looking at your habits and what habits you have certain behaviors, habits that then define your behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of our behavior is instinctive. So how would you respond to that? Was it addressing habits, or was it addressing beliefs, or probably was addressing both, wasn't it?
All of the above, all of the above.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. You asked how would you respond. One of the distinctions that I learned along the way is the difference between responding and reacting.
Mm-hmm.
My natural tendency is to react. It's completely automatic. It's all given by the past. Any reaction is given by the past because it's automatic. There is no time is spent to calculate route. It's so quick, it's instantaneous, and it's past-based. However, if I stop that, if I hold that automation from running at that point, and I actually contemplate, no, it doesn't have to take too long. Sometimes it will, but it could be a split second to contemplate. And it's in electronics, we have, or in computers, interrupt. It's a big thing, interrupt and masking interrupts, not letting interrupts come through. So I treat that. This is a good example where I bring tools and experience from the technical world or the engineering world to working with human beings. We interrupt that automatic reaction, and instead we respond in a way that serves the greater good. For example, I'll see my wife, and this took me years to learn.
Too long.
And I learned the hard way. Too long. However, for the last few years, I'm already celebrating this triumph. And it's so important to celebrate. We don't celebrate enough. I celebrate this triumph. This might sound to people like a really dumb example, but for me, this is really important. My wife, the way she slices cucumbers is horrible. In all, if you ask any chef in the world, they will say it's horrible. She uses the wrong cutting board, she uses the wrong knife, and she cuts improper slices of cucumber. Okay?
What is an improper slice of a cucumber? Varying widths?
For example, or not only varying width, David, it's within a single slice, the width is different. So kind of like a P-shaped.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
I hope she won't listen to this episode. I mean, she will. I mean, we'll see.
I heard the story before.
She knows, and she celebrates with me. I mean, she's so happy. So in the past, for years, every time I would see her doing this, I would have a lot to say. And in the beginning, it was just a pure reaction, nasty way, like barking at her. Yeah. And then I advanced, so it was less barking and more kind of assistive. Kind of, why don't you try this? And why don't you do that? Really nice about it. So I learned already not to be the automatic. I already induced some properness, a better me. But still, she didn't like that whatsoever. And at a certain point, I learned to just accept her cutting of the cucumbers. Just accept it and not make it an issue. Actually, these days, I appreciate the artistic way of her cucumber cutting and the result. And it's not coming from a superficial place of, oh, I'll play as if I'm happy. No, I truly appreciate. Now, why? Because I'm not screwing up her relationship every time. Like, in the morning, if that would happen when I was barking, the whole day would be off because I misbehaved from her perspective. Okay, so this is a very simple, rudimentary example.
Well, wait a minute. You said you misbehaved from her perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But now, if I'm hearing you correctly, you misbehaved based on your perspective. Am I hearing you correctly, or?
Yes, and it's based on this relationship. So this is a very a very rich territory.
Yeah.
When you are in a relationship, any relationship, it could be someone you just met on the street. Part of the magic is to define the relationship, define the boundaries. Now I have my boundaries, she has her boundaries, or anyone, it could be any person. Like you and I are in a relationship and we defined boundaries. You sent me some information before, I read it, I agreed. We actually set a lot of boundaries in our relationships, David. And this is the first time that we're actually speaking to each other.
Yeah.
So that already sets us for a very good start in our relationship. Now, in most relationships, no one sets boundaries at the get-go. Maybe after years, if at all.
They make assumptions.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So I assumed for many years that my wife will be happy for me to provide her input about the cucumber cutting. And I was kind of wrong. So once I...
Kind of.
Once, and you know that this is just one of 1,000 examples, right? But to your point, when I'm in a relationship with someone, I want to, and this I'm speaking about myself, but this is anyone listening, when you are in a relationship with someone, you really want to invite you to discover what are their expectations. So you have a chance to show up in a positive way in the relationship from their perspective.
Yeah.
Now, if their expectations are malicious, please don't go there. So you need to have your boundaries. It's not a submission. Sometimes it's a surrender. So this is, again, two words that are sometimes used interchangeably, and the distinction is very important. I'm not talking about submission. I'm talking about surrender. When I accepted how she wants to do something, or accepting to behave a certain way that matches her expectations, there might be a good amount of surrender. And when you surrender, it's wholeheartedly. It could be wholeheartedly. I choose to surrender. I would do it differently. So what?
Well, you're opening a lot of things here. So first of all, starting with the last one, the surrender piece. After many decades of my faith, one of the things I'm learning, and I'm still at the beginning of it, is the power in relationship with God when you surrender to God fully. And so that's an interesting thing, and I like it with relationship. I will mention there's a guy I know, or used to know, Judd Boyes, Boies, and he did something with his wife where, I forget how he came up with the idea, but he tells the story where he went to his wife one day and said, "Hey, honey, I want you to write a list of what I need to do to be the best husband in the world." And she looked at him, she said, "Yeah, why? What are you up to?" And they had a good relationship, so this wasn't a bad relationship. And he said, "Well, no, I really like to give it a try, and I'm gonna write a list for you on what I want you to do to be the best wife in the world." She goes, "Oh, now I know what you're up to." Anyway, they exchanged these lists, and I don't know how long they were. I should really call him. He lives in this area. I should just call him. But they went about 3 weeks, and Judd thought he was hitting it out of the park. So he kind of asked in kind of a cocky tone, "Hey, honey, how am I doing on your list there?" And she said, "Not very good." He goes, "What are you talking about? I'm doing this, I'm doing that." She said, "You were doing that before. That's nothing." And he goes, Oh. He said, "Okay, well, take back your list, and I want you to list it, reorder it in order of priority. What's most important? You can even weight it for what's most important, okay?" And they then used those two lists, and they looked at them every week to just say, "How am I doing?" And they walk it through one by one. They wouldn't say, "How am I doing overall?" "Yeah, you're right." And they did that for, I'd say, 15 or so years. They also did it with their two young daughters. When their daughters got to be teenagers, I was actually speaking at an event at his church, and it turned out his wife was my room monitor. I'd never known her before, met her before. So I used this as one of my examples. I was teaching people about leadership to use with your team members. And at the end, when I asked for Q&A, she raised her hand. I thought I was toast, Reuven. I thought, oh man, what did I do? I did something wrong with the story. But she said, I'm really glad you brought that up because it was extremely powerful for us. A few years back, we stopped being so consistent with it. And I think it's hurt our family dynamic. And so we need to go back on that and go back to it. But a very powerful thing. I teach that now as with my clients. Anyway, so I think this is really good. So we had beliefs, and I'm structuring it a little bit here, so correct me if it's different in your program or what you've learned. Beliefs, and then that leads to habits, which are reactive, and you're saying respond. And one of the things that you did not specifically say, but I'm hearing you allude to, two things. One is that you chose relationships, number one, over some type of achievement. And number two, you also, by getting more aware of your being, to use that term, you set some goals for yourself. And that affected how the new habits that you wanted to learn, the new processes you want to learn, including your 7-step method, I'm sure. But am I on the right track? Anything you want to?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
No, absolutely. It's I'm really happy to hear from you these pointers. Relationships, I can say that today, is the most important thing in my life. There is something I found that no matter what happens in business, in personal life, just on the street, the quality of my relationships with other people and with myself is the key to everything. And it's one of the measurements, talking about the lists and revisiting them, basically a dashboard for, just like we have dashboards for anything in business, dashboard for my personal life. To all your listeners, if you don't have a dashboard for your personal life or your life in general, I invite you to create one. And that's something that we can talk about. But I might have just invented a new product.
Yeah, there you go.
The dashboard of your life. Anyways, relationships, in my dashboard, there is a special column for relationships that are not complete. What I mean by complete is I am at peace with. Okay? That's my definition of complete. I am at peace with. And from my perspective, my commitment is that list will be 0. It's like cleaning out the inbox for some people. So currently, I have 2 lines on that list. One is a friend / client / colleague, past client, several times, who at a certain point is not stopped responding to my outreach. Like I want to talk to him and he deflected or didn't respond. And that's incomplete still, work in progress. And another is a friend who, from her perspective, I mistreated someone related to her young that came to me for advice, and it went like this. He called, she asked if she can introduce her, let's call him nephew. It's not exactly a nephew, but kind of nephew. He's a youngster, he just graduated, he's seeking career advice. Said, sure, have him reach out, I'll be happy to talk to him. I'm always happy to talk to anyone. And we get on the call, we schedule the call, he reached out through LinkedIn, and we get on the call, and he says, can you tell me about yourself? And I said, did you read my LinkedIn? Did you check out my website? What do you know until now? He says, oh no, I didn't at all. And at that time I was very busy with work, and I'm doing a favor here. And I said, how about go read and come back to me, schedule again after you've read, so we can hit the ground running and I can really help you according to what you know about me and how I can help you. And he said, okay. And we parted ways, and I never heard back from him. And apparently, she was deeply hurt that I responded this way or reacted this way. It was more of a reaction, I have to admit.
I don't know. I would argue that depending on your tone, it was a reaction or a response. If your tone was as gentle as it was just now, that's a response. If it was, yeah, then
I admit. So, this is, on one hand, I know that I'm right. I could get court expert witness to testify that I was right. But in relationships world, in the human aspect of life, I failed completely. What would happen if I gave him some slack? This youngster who maybe this is what he has to learn. And I was so happy in the beginning because I said, I taught him a lesson. It was already worth his time. I taught him a lesson, but apparently he didn't come back, so he didn't learn the lesson, and it caused damage in another relationship, which is even personal. So those are my 2 items on the list, but that's it. Imagine family, extended family, friends, colleagues, clients. I have been working very hard in the last more than 2 decades. It's a value for me to have all my relationships complete, meaning at peace. Everything that there was to communicate was communicated. If I messed up, I cleaned up the mess. I apologized. I made amendments. This is the same way that I treat my clients. And it's very unique because, most of the work is time and material with my corporate clients. And sometimes, when there is some issue, a crisis around the project or something like that, I take the entire topic of money and I set it aside. I said, I'm not here to clock hours. I'm here to be your trusted advisor, to be on your side no matter what, and help you the best I can. Money, compensation, business is secondary. First, the relationship, and then the work at hand, and only then everything else. And this is what I'm practicing in all my relationships, business related, money related, personal related, etc. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it so much.
No, I totally agree. Relationships need to come first. And I'll go back again to something I said earlier. America would be a very different place today if we put relationships first. And we're not taught that in the media and that type of thing. But let's not go down that path. So one of the statements that I say, I have 10 statements that I try to say pretty regularly. Some people call them power statements, whatever. They have to do with my faith. And a tail end of that one statement that is about forgiveness is that I love and forgive people, but with healthy boundaries. So as much as when we're talking about relationships, there are certain people that Zig Ziglar used to have a statement that said some people's minds are just like concrete. They're all mixed up and permanently set. So I'm not saying they're all like that, but there are some people that just in their place in the journey at this time when you're interacting with them is not healthy for whatever reason. And so you talk about the boundaries that are reasonable, because sometimes you try to be reasonable with a person, like your friend that's on that list, former client, etc., who won't respond. Well, there's not a lot you can do in that situation. Talk about that.
Yeah. So with this one specifically, I'll send him this episode. This is what I'll do. Because it's the very first time that I'm talking about this publicly.
Yeah, and by the way, you can tell him when you said to him, you say, if you're uncomfortable talking to me, would you like to talk to David first as a sounding board? This is a sounding board because, and no charge, just to be a friend, someone who's just trying to help, because I'm all for a good relationship.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. I think that the key reason that he was running away is that he felt bad. There were things not in his control that caused to halt a project that we were working on. And I think he just I think he felt bad. And I'm assuming that given his the way he communicated before when there were cuts and changes, and he was very apologetic and And I kind of like, in my entire business of management consulting, I am supposed to be terminated. I'm here to just help you accomplish something, and then I move on. I'm not supposed to stay a long term. So it's not a problem. But I think he was bothered, maybe because we were also friends and colleagues. So maybe it was that. And he's also extremely busy, very high up there with a lot of things to do. And the last thing he needs now is a tough conversation. That was my assumption. Nonetheless, I, for myself, needed the closure, the just keep in touch. I'm always here for you kind of thing. Always here for you, etc. At a certain point, maybe after a week or two of me trying, email and WhatsApp and text and Slack, and he didn't respond at all, I simply left him a voicemail, a long voicemail. I remember exactly where I was here on the 85 on the on-ramp, and I left him. Every time I go there, I remember this voicemail. I left him maybe a minute-long voicemail of, look, I really don't know. I hope I didn't do anything wrong, because I don't really know. Maybe I did something wrong. And I have no idea. I said, I apologize if I did anything wrong. I just want to hear your voice. I just want to know that we're good, or if not, let's discuss and make the best out of it. And he didn't respond to that either. And then I realized I did everything. I mean, I could knock at his door, but I didn't go to that extent. So
yeah. Right.
To a certain extent, he lives on the East Coast as well. So maybe if I'll be in the neighborhood, for sure I will knock on the door.
Yeah.
But I haven't been to the East Coast since this happened. So I decided that I did everything I could in context, and I'll just let it be, and I'll let nature do its course.
Yeah, and I think that was...
And it was hard to get to that stage, but that's where I was at. Then I got notified on LinkedIn, oh no, happy birthday. I wished him happy birthday, or a promotion. I congratulated the promotion. I said, maybe it will, nothing. Then he left his workplace and moved to another place, and I got a notification on LinkedIn. So I congratulated him, and I wrote him a message. Maybe this is a better time to catch up. And he immediately responded, absolutely, let's do that. And then I suggested a couple time frames next week, and I didn't hear back. So this was a few months ago, and that's where it stands. But I feel a lot better because I got a signal of life. And I know that I'll resolve this, but it's still on the list.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a similar situation recently with a guy who we talked about doing some work together. Really enjoy him. Talked many times, several times. Consider him as friend, not just someone who might be someone I'm going to work with. And then he ran into a difficulty in his business. And he said, I'm going to be really tied up with this. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to move forward at this time. And I forget how it ended, whether I'll get back to you or whatever, or such and such. So a few weeks went by. I reached out via text. Then I reached out via email. And I reached out via text. Something like that. And so I reached out about 3 times, no response. And in this case, I realized in retrospect, so I always believe I need to own my part. If there's 100% of a problem and I'm only 1% wrong, I still got to own my 1%. Mm-hmm. So one thing I didn't do is when he told me this, I didn't say, well, when do you want me to reach out? This is a line I use a lot. When do you want me to reach out to you if I haven't heard from you? Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't care how long you need. That's fine. You can take a week, but let's not just leave it open. Mm-hmm. But I didn't, and that was a mistake. So it reached the stage after 3 or 4 outreaches that I had made without a reply that last week I left a message, actually on Thursday of last week, so a little over a week ago, and I was similar to what you left. I said, hey, I just want to get in touch because we were going to follow up on this. And I'm just worried about you. Are you okay? And number 2, if I've done anything wrong, well, if you can let me know, because I value our friendship more than any business potential we would have had, And I just want to make sure you're okay. And if I did something wrong, you'll let me know so I can learn from it and apologize. If not, you've got other thoughts, I'd be happy to connect. But if you could let me know either way, I'd appreciate it. That was Thursday. Over the weekend, he reached out and he said, sorry, I've been busy. It's been very hectic. And why don't we try to touch base on Friday, today? So he didn't give me a time. So I went back to him. I said, okay, I waited till Monday to respond because it was an email. And I said, so great. So when would you like to talk on Friday? No response. And then today I reached out via text. You still want to talk today? And he reached out. He said, sorry, I got this issue. I'm going to have to delay. So I responded shortly before this podcast. So he hasn't had time to respond potentially. But I said, sure, what's a day and time that you'd like to connect or you'd like me to call you if I haven't heard from you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
So sometimes we just have to do that with people. Some people have habits, like you brought up, you had past habits, where they have had other people model that behavior, where it's okay to go dark.
Yeah.
And my response is that in this time, this digital age, in 3 to 5 seconds, you can text me, I'm going to be buried until the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Let's connect after that.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I also have to find that balance that you found, where sometimes you just got to let the quiet time happen. And then something will, I don't want to say trigger because that sounds like a negative, but something will remind you, now might be a good time to reach out one more time. Or like you saw on LinkedIn, you had those opportunities.
Yeah, the universe will deliver, or some people would say God will deliver. Some people will say universe, sometimes whatever term you feel comfortable using or believe in or like using. There is that whole world of being connected that I alluded to in the beginning. It's part of it. And you reminded me, by the way, in your story, thank you for sharing that the person that I was talking about, dear to my heart, I really love this man. When we started our engagement, the first engagement in the previous company, he said that sometimes he won't respond to emails because he's swamped and he doesn't. So if it's something really important, don't rely on email. So it's even like there are people that, and until today, I find sometimes I have a current client who said, don't expect me to respond to all emails because I can't make it through all of them. So let's figure out a way. If it's something really urgent, I said, if it's something really urgent, I'm going to call you, I'm going to text you, I'm going to wake you up at night if needed. And we agreed on that. So it's all good. It goes back to setting expectations.
Exactly.
Setting boundaries, having open communication, sharing with each other. Well, going back to your friend and his wife, sharing with each other what we need.
Yeah.
What we need.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind that neither of us, I think, have said is that if we feel really anxious, so I'm a believer that of a teaching I heard, not mine, that there's 2 major emotions that trigger the rest of them, and it's love and fear. Mm-hmm. So if we have fear, we're anxious, and we feel like really got to reach this person, that it's more about me than the relationship. And that's the piece we need to let go. That's the habit we need to learn. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Is this about me, or is this about him, or is this about the relationship? Is this about some money that's in the contract? Or, I'm saying I care about him, but is it about the money in the contract? It's like, wait a minute. If it's truly about him, I just need to back off because he's got something going on, or there's something, whatever, whether it has to do with me or otherwise, that I just need to give it some time. And that's what has to happen. And some people, you give them time, and if they are, I only have 1 person, 2 people who have gotten upset with me and never let go. Okay? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what I say, what I do. Mm-hmm. Hey, I've tried. I've apologized, I don't know how many times to each party. And with each of them, I would disagree that I am the problem. But maybe I'm wrong. But they're not going to change. One will be civil at times and really nasty at other times. I still have to interact with that person. The other person, our paths don't cross. So that person hates me from afar. And I didn't do anything really. I don't really have any idea what I did. But anyway, sometimes it's just the way it is. So this has been really good, but we're not done. So we need to get into your Untangling Complex Challenges, because I love great systems. It sounds like you have put not just a lot of thought and knowledge and skill into creating this, but you've put, I would say, a piece of your soul into this. And so I'm really interested. If you can walk us through this, I'd love to hear about it. I'm sure the audience would too.
Sure. I'm happy to. And David, it's not a piece of my soul. It is my soul. It is my
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay.
My
connect too. Yeah.
One of the outcomes of anyone who uses this methodology is alignment.
Okay.
And different people will create alignment between different aspects. It's not a alignment between certain, two certain things. Every person will find creating alignment if they actually do the work. They will create alignment that was not there before. And for example, what I do for a living is 100% aligned with who I am as a human being, aligned with my life purpose, with why I'm here. And that experience of being aligned is probably the fire that drives me to share this with the world and teach people to have a sense of that. Because for me, that's what made the difference in experiencing challenges and overcoming them, etc. So, to your question,
would you like to share your life purpose, Reuven? I mean, if that's a core component here or a core driver.
So, I defined my life purpose for the first time. This is an intimate question, and yes, I would like to. I'll preface that the first time that I defined my life purpose as a statement was in 2008. I worked with this wonderful woman from Arizona who helped me, who guided me through the process. I also read a few books on the topic and did some work. But I crafted this statement that I was sure, I got all the permission that it's work in progress and it can change every day and don't worry about it. And I was sure that it will change and morph all the time. And to my surprise, it remained. I was checked like a dashboard. I was checking almost on a daily basis. Am I aligned with my life purpose? Every day that I live, I was looking for, was I aligned? Where was I not aligned? So I know tomorrow how I can create more alignment. So I was very present to my life purpose for many years, and it didn't change a single bit for several years. And then I started playing with it a little bit more because I found that I evolved to the extent that so part of my life purpose in 2008 was to be connected. Now, what does it mean? Connected with people, for example. The relationships part that we talked about.
Yeah.
I was still learning that skill or that world of relationships at that time. To be connected with the universe, with nature. I was early in my practice of meditation. So I got a glimpse of it. I sensed I got a lot of value. I knew there is more. And I wanted it to be a fundamental part of my life, to be connected with all things. Later, like recent years, when I looked at my life purpose again, the statement itself said, I'm really connected. Sometimes I'm reactive. Sometimes I lack awareness. Sometimes the past patterns come in so fast that I can't. But for the most part, I'm really connected to things, to people, to systems, to processes, to my surroundings, to nature. I'm experiencing nature in a whole different way that I didn't have access to. And that's thanks to a lot of learnings and practices and things. So it's still part of my purpose, but there are things that kind of morph and change. One thing remained the absolute constant, which if you ask me today, and you did, what is my life purpose? One thing remains and will probably stay as my life purpose, and that is to be a contribution. And that's who I am here. That is my life purpose. Use me. I'm here for you.
It's very interesting, and we're delaying going into your methodology, but what I'm hearing that you've alluded to several times, it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, Reuven, that one of the major changes in your life since you've gone through this is that you have embraced gratitude at a much deeper level than you had since you were 7 years old. And that is incredibly powerful.
You know where I noticed that? You're spot on, David. Do you know where I realized that I'm grateful?
It's okay. Take a moment. Take a moment. I have my moments where I sob. And that we don't have to go into the reasons why I do that, but I have my moments, but you take a moment if you need it.
It's very human.
Yeah. Well, and I think it happens more often as we become more aware of ourselves.
Yeah. The permission to let emotions be.
Yeah.
So, Big Sur, California, on the coast, famous, beautiful Highway 1. There is a place in Big Sur between Highway 1 and the ocean, which is a very narrow piece of land. There's a place called Esalen Institute. And it's a place that was created in 1960s by two Stanford dropouts as an institution devoted to researching human potential. And in this day and age, for me, it's a beautiful place that has hundreds of workshops every year in the entire rainbow of what it is to be human, from massage therapy discipline, through roving, through meditation and leadership, and anyone can find themselves there. It's a beautiful place on the ocean with mineral water, hot baths that you sit right on the ocean, hear all the waves break, and farm to table food and all that. It's a magical place. And I've been visiting there since 2008. That was a pivotal year for me in my search and in my journey. And one of my visits there, I did a sweat lodge. It was the first time in my life that I did a sweat lodge. And it was with the natives from that land who led it. Tihikpas, I love you. And in that sweat lodge, on the verge of conking out, because I could hardly breathe, I was at the edge and I was digging my nose into the ground looking for fresh air, cooler fresh air. It was really hot and humid, and probably in an altered state at that point. And what was present was all the people that I was so grateful for them being in my life.
Yeah.
My teachers, my parents, my family, especially friends, but especially those pivotal people who are pivotal in my growth and development journey, both professional and personal. People who are always there for me, no matter what. And I realized at that point also the importance of having a support network. And that's one thing that I emphasize with the people who I work with, is to check in and see how supported are they by themselves, the people who are close to them, and sometimes there is a place to create a support network. I find it critical, and that's what I'm most grateful for in my entire life.
Well, that's great. It's interesting, too, that you want to contribute. One of the things that I have come to believe is that gratitude leads to responsibility. Because you're thankful, you want to be a good steward, or you want to contribute, as you say, but it comes from the gratitude and not a selfish place, but a loving place. It comes from love, not from fear. So interesting. So that was very powerful, and I appreciate you opening up about that. Okay, let's go back to your methodology.
Okay. Okay, so it's really simple. You take something that is really complex, you break it down to the smallest pieces possible, okay, and then you reassemble it from a different context. So I'll explain.
So there's 7 steps in that?
Yeah. The truth is there are many more steps, but when I documented it, I said, 15 steps to untangling, too much, no one will read. 7 is a sexy number. I'll use 7. 7.
Well, in the ancient world, 7 meant complete. So that's a good.
There you go.
7's a good number.
I didn't even know that. I guess subconsciously I knew that.
Yeah, very devout Jewish guy who Ben Bruckner, who's a wonderful man, taught me that years ago as I was coming up with common values for America, and I had 12. He goes, "Yeah, that's too many. It's a good number, but it's too many." I said, "Well, what about like 7?" He goes, "Yeah, that's good. That means in the ancient world, that meant complete." So
okay, so I grew up Jewish. I identify as Jewish, so maybe really in my subconscious, it was instilled.
There you go.
So the first
Can you give us an example? Can you walk us through an example? Because that would help us learn.
Yes, I can, but it would take too long.
Okay, all right.
It would take to actually go through the entire. It would take too long.
Okay.
But I can give a sense where this work can be applied. It could be so I'll share a few steps, and then I'll share where it could be applied, and that should complete the picture. You know, like I said, one of the applications was saving my marriage using this methodology. So that's one application. The first thing to do is to take our thoughts out of our head and put them on paper or on whatever substance you use, a computer or whatever. I don't know if you saw the logo that I use. It's kind of a ball of thread with different colors in a head, and a little guy pulling out the strings, individual colors. That the little dude is me, supposed to be me. Stick figure kind of thing. Yeah. So the idea is that one of the things that make challenge complex is that there are many moving parts to it. So if I want to lose weight, it's kind of simple. Eat less, exercise more. It's not a complex challenge. And there are a bazillion experts that will help you, guide you, accountability and all that. But if you add to that...
It can be complex. It can be complex because as you make those decisions, you say no to other things. And whether you have certain health issues, etc. So
exactly. It could be combined with other considerations. It could seem like a very complex challenge.
Yeah.
But at that time, the issue identified is probably, I need to lose weight. It's probably a much big entanglement of stuff. So the first thing to do is to get all the thoughts out of the head, because it's impossible to deal with all the thoughts that come up. And they keep on coming, the little voice that all of us have. So we let that little voice express itself, and we put it all out of ourselves. Then we can start working with whatever is out there, like a puzzle, and take different items and group them together because they're related, or draw relationships between them if exist. That's also a time where we can start identifying what are facts versus stories or meanings that we gave, what are emotions that come up, show up as we articulate. So I was taught, you asked me about something trivial and I found tears in my eyes because I got all emotional. Okay, great. That indicates something. So let's document that I feel a certain way when I think about that, etc. So we end up with a kind of a map of topics that are articulated in a manner that we can work with and build on.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, many people already start seeing things differently because they didn't they didn't have the clarity that this method brings inherently. So it becomes, some people very quickly, it also depends on the person and how versed they are in the tools that we use. Some see the connection and say, oh, I could put this in an Excel spreadsheet and do a weighted average and come to a decision. Sometimes there is a place to that later in the process, but some people go and do that right away. So just mentioning that it's not a linear process. The starting point is typically the same, but then what happens within the 7 steps, it could jump between them and not necessarily linear. So then we organize the different aspects, groups, dependencies, who is involved. It could be people, entities, companies, things, numbers, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The important point here is to not leave anything unattended to. This is key. Most people, when they deal with stuff, with challenges, there are places that they don't want to go into because XYZ.
Yeah.
I insist. Now, sometimes we have to do it responsibly because sometimes there are trauma or issues, or it involves other people that are not willing to participate or something. So being responsible, but at least we inspect, even if we end up not going into each and every area like that, we check the boundaries, we check a few things. So the idea is to either excavate everything or identify diligently the areas that we consciously choose to not excavate now. So it's not disappearing from our view. We don't forget about it. It's just we know that there is something unresolved there.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
No, I'm good. Okay. Keep going.
I thought you want to say something. So with having said that, then we typically look at the language spoken. We look at what's there, and then we evaluate, we analyze what's actually written there. So for example, I want to build a business. We look at what's the I. When you say, I want to build a business, who is speaking there? Oh, I said that. Yeah, well, okay, which part of you? What do you mean, which part of me? So we go into a little bit of human dynamics. For example, there are many modalities we could choose to work with. But for example, an easy one is, there is my intellect, there is my emotional self, there is my body, and there is my spiritual self. That's one model that I like using from Bob Hoffman, the Hoffman process. And with that, a place to look at, did I actually come up with, any part of me came up with that desire? Or was I taught from a very young age that I have to build a business? Someone else said it. Or I envy my friend who made $1 billion yesterday with the IPO of a company. Is that why I want to do it? So we look at the different thoughts, desires, statements that came up, and we qualify them. We chat. I don't want to say challenge, but we do. We actually look at it, we analyze them to refine and find what actually really is important to you. So we're not dealing with superficial stuff and ideas that we're actually not committed to. It's someone else's dream maybe, or it's a dream that I had, but it's irrelevant now and I have to let go and reinvent and invent something else, whatever it would be. Sometimes it's cultural standards and ideals. Like when I raised my kids are 25 and almost 25 and 22. There was a certain point in life that I was so frustrated that I didn't raise them in the strong Jewish traditions. It bothered me. So I had to do some work on that. And I discovered, and I apologize if anyone from my family is listening. I apologize if this offends anyone. I found that my connection with their religion is a little bit lower than my upbringing. And I'm fine with it. Maybe it's the distance from the Holy Land. It is the other side of the world. But so things like that. There is also, we talked about it in the beginning, past influence. So what's coming completely from the past versus what I want to create. And for that part, sometimes I'll send my clients to do the Landmark Forum or other programs that I found extremely helpful in order to gain the tool set needed for some of the conversations. Because our concepts that we can talk about and we understand them, but until you don't actually do the work, a lot of work on actual topics that are running in your life, it's hard to use the tools properly and effectively. So, and also part of this analysis is to separate symptoms from root causes. Most people, when they deal with problems or challenges, they see the symptoms and they work on the symptoms. I'm interested in getting to the root cause and handling it there, and then it helps, obviously. So with that, comes, I alluded to the step of an Excel spreadsheet. Now, not always Excel spreadsheet, and there are people that will refuse to use computer tools, and that's totally fine. Pen and paper works well for me as well. Prioritization. You talked about it also before with the couple, right? Yep. Prioritization, ranking, discipline. A key aspect of any project or program management is identifying the critical path. What's really critical that we must focus on, it's not must, it's I say, I want to, I am committed to, I am choosing powerfully to focus on this path. That's a critical path, and that releases me from all the noise around. So identifying the critical path is important, and then it's more in the world of structure and execution, a dashboard, a project plan. Again, people who are not well-versed in the worlds of projects, I teach them that part. Sometimes it's people that are well-versed, like I mentioned, the person who on our first meeting already opened Excel. For those people, it's many times more, let's close our eyes and breathe deep and do a few PQ, positive intelligence repetitions, like feeling into our body, releasing thoughts, being grounded. Let's go on a walk in nature rather than talking, and then we'll regroup. So depending on where the person is, the different tools and modalities, I weave them in to meet where they are and elevate their experience of the work itself. Because it's a lot of work, so it has to be tailored to the person, so it's not a chore. They're actually excited about it every time they go to work at it.
Oh, yeah. No, that's great. So we've gone on for some time here. So is there any closing thoughts you have before you let us know, how people can connect with you, Reuven, and where they can find out more about the work that you're doing?
Sure. And I also said that I'll mention applications. So I mentioned one, a key application. I think, if we take our conversation today, we actually talked about several aspects like relationships and connection between professional life and personal life. Those are all examples for the typical domains in working in this methodology. And it could be deeply personal, it could be deeply technical. Most of the corporate projects that I do involve technology and swarms and sprints and stuff, but it's mainly the connection between the two. I feel torn between my professional life and my personal life. I just feel stuck. I tried lots of things. That's a common denominator. I tried everything and I'm still stuck in the same place. That's a good reason to contact me. Having said that, I can be reached at meetreuven.com to schedule a call. I would love to hear from anyone, just what you're facing, what you're up to, and see if I can help or just share some wisdom. And my website is reuvenshelef.com. And I'm sure you'll put them in the meeting notes so people have a reference.
They definitely will be there. And I want to thank you very much for your candor and for sharing your thoughts. There's a lot of great things here for people to learn from. And I wish you the best.
David, thank you very much. This was the word that comes to mind, profound. I paused for a moment because it's a serious word. Profound is serious.
Oh, very, very.
But that's what showed up, and I stick to the messages that I receive. And it was such a pleasure being on your show. You went deeper than I'm used to. The questions or the invitations that you shared were deeper than what typically I receive, and I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your candor, because it gave the audience an opportunity to really think about what you said and your journey and whether they need to make a stop on their journey. And maybe it's where the two roads divide type of thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just you need to get some clarification. So thanks again, and I wish you the best.
Thank you very much. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.